All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Tonight's topic is a little bit lighter. It's just some tips and tricks for reliability, and reliability just meaning, you know, what can you do with your team to have the best shot at having your robot work for the whole qualifier, and not quit in the middle of a match. So just some things to think about and to talk through with your team. So I will share my screen, Ria. One moment here. Okay,
All right, looks good.
Ria, go right ahead.
Okay, so just like Mr. Newsted said, we're going to be talking about robot reliability and then some tips and tricks that might help you guys with your robot during the season. So my name is Ria. I've been on the team for 4 years and I've been on mechanical for all 4 years. And then this is my first year on the drive team, but I've been human player in the past. So just to quickly go over all that we're going to talk about during this presentation, we're going to start with robot architecture and design. So how to design a robust and sturdy robot that does well and performs consistently every match. And then we're also going to talk about robot construction. So building a robot using proper fasteners and technique to make sure it's really consistent. And then also wiring, because that can be a point of contention for a lot of newer teams. And then also robot health and best practices. So keeping your robot clean and functional throughout the season. And then some questions if anyone has any. So first for robot architecture and design, to make sure you have the most stable robot as possible, try to have as many triangles, enclosed squares, and right angles as possible. So that's why you're going to see a lot of robots that are kind of box shaped and have a lot of right angles because those are going to be the most stable. And a second thing is don't use servos to support long structures or arms. So if you have a short linkage on your servo, that's totally fine. But if you have a super long structure or a heavy structure on the end of your servo, that could lead to your servo getting broken because they're not made to withstand that much weight and force. And then another thing is make sure you use metal on your robot. So your side plates should be metal, a lot of your arms and a lot of the frame, because during matches your robot's going to get pushed around, especially during this season. So make sure that you're protecting all the elements of your robot by making it metal. And then also keep as many parts covered as possible. So that means especially the more sensitive parts. So wires should be covered, your control hub should be covered, and then batteries and all that stuff. Another thing is to design a rev hub sandwich to protect hub and wiring. So you can kind of see that in the image where there's the flat metal plate on the inside and then the rev hub, and then that has all the wires connected to it. And then on the outside is the plastic cover, and then that's connected to the flat metal plate with standoffs. So you're really going to want to make sure that there's something protecting your wiring and your rev hub because if that's exposed, then it's a lot more dangerous during matches if that gets caught on things or if it hits something. So make sure that you have it all secured. And then another thing is to design a battery holder. So right there is a CAD file, but it could be as simple as like a rectangular box with the top cut off. It's just a little bucket for the battery to sit in that it won't move from. And you're going to want to connect that to metal as well so it's stable and the battery doesn't move around because that could be a problem as well during matches. Secondly, to go over robot construction, make sure you have more bolts rather than less. So you're going to want to make sure everything is as secure as possible. So to connect parts, you're going to want 2 bolts. And then if something is spinning, bending, or has a lot of pressure on it, 3 bolts or more is better. And then when you have bolts, make sure to use nylock nuts and washers everywhere. So those are just nuts that are a lot more secure and harder to get off. And then Loctite if you can't use Nylox in that place, which is a liquid that sticks it into place as well. When you're using standoffs, so that's whenever you're connecting 2 plates, use more of them rather than less. And then when you have standoffs, you're going to want to use longer bolts rather than shorter ones because that makes sure it's more stable. Shorter ones, it's easier for them to come out and then it's not as secure. Also, just make sure you have your rev hub and battery holder fastened against solid metal plates because those are parts that are really important to the robot and you want to make sure they're protected from all the moving parts of the game and your robot at all times. So make sure those are fastened against plates and solid things that won't move. And then as for wiring, this can be tricky, but just to show you guys a good example and a bad example. So the one on the top left is a bad example because all the wires are kind of in a mess on top of each other on the top of the robot, and it's a little difficult to tell where the wires are coming from. The one on the right, it's a lot more organized. They're all very clear where it's going to. So you're going to want to make sure that your wires are clear. They're all kind of bundled together so it's easier to like manage. And that's going to help you a lot during the season with your consistency as well. And then something that's really important for wiring. So there's three things. So zip ties, cable clamps, and split sleeves. So zip ties are super important to kind of take a bunch of individual wires that are in a similar location to a bundle of wires. And that's super helpful because it's a lot more efficient than having a bunch of wires that are all kind of in a mess. So you can stick them all together and make like little clumps of wires. And then cable clamps are helpful because you can take these bundles and you can secure them to one place to make sure they don't move around. And even if you have moving parts, you can put the cable clamp on and the wires are going to move in a predictable way rather than just going everywhere because they're not secured to one place. And then split sleeves are where you can take the bundles of wires and you can take a lot of wires at once and you can kind of sandwich them all inside the split sleeve. And that's helpful, especially around moving parts, because none of the wires are going to be exposed and it keeps them all safe from all the moving parts of your robot. And then, so try to wire in bundles. So as wires kind of come together, you can zip tie them, put them in cable clamps and split sleeves, and then they're all going to go to the Rev Hub sandwich, which is also going to have plates on both sides to keep that safe. And then this is actually no longer mandatory, but there used to be something called grounding straps, which you attach to the robot frame and the Rev hub. And that keeps the static electricity on your robot from building up. So that's super helpful to help with electrostatic discharge, but it's no longer mandatory.
If you don't have one, don't freak out about it, and we can give you one at the rookie qualifier. We just really think they're a good best practice. I'm not sure why they made them not mandatory, but if you don't have one, just when you check in with your robot, let us know, and we'll give you one, and you can help you put it on if you need.
Okay. Do you still have to do then your ESD spray? Do you use that in conjunction with it?
You can do the ESD spray. I'm not a firm believer in that. I feel like if you follow the design practices that Ria's walking through, not having wires move around, have the rev plates attached to the metal frame of the robot, adjacent to them, and do the ESD straps. We've never had to do that. We haven't used the stuff in forever.
Okay.
And I think more of the problems that people have are a result of wires flopping around and connections coming loose, and they say, "Oh, it ESD'd." And I think 99% of the time, it's more that stuff just wasn't secure and they're getting loose connections and things over time. But you can do it. It's
Okay.
definitely not going to hurt anything. But I do feel it's more
Okay.
of a myth than a reality if you follow the other best practices. Other people will say exactly the opposite, but that's kind of where we started from.
Okay. So that goes right into the control hub then?
Yeah, this plugs in. There are two power ports on your control hub or your expansion hub if you've got one of those. This plugs
Yep.
into one of them, either one, and
Okay.
it grounds the control. It grounds the negative terminal of the battery and then the control hubs to the frame of the robot, and it just prevents static electricity from building up between the control hubs and the frame of the robot. So, um,
Okay.
and if, like I said, if you don't have one, yell and we'll give you one when you check in.
Yeah, I would be interested in that,
Okay,
definitely.
right, good.
Thank you.
All right, and then some general stuff for keeping your robot healthy and all the best practices for that. So make sure that you're keeping your robot practice fields and travel boxes to carry the robot and its elements clean. So that involves, if you're going on your practice field, sometimes taking off your shoes or every so often sweeping it or vacuuming it to make sure all the dust gets off, because over time when a lot of people are on the field and a lot of dust gets on the field, it does get in the robot over time and that can damage a lot of the robot's elements. So it's important to keep all those clean. And then also keep your robot and driver hub inside like your house or a building, because so don't leave it out in the cold, especially because here in Wisconsin, as you guys know, it can get really cold. So that can damage, it can degrade the batteries and other elements of the robot. So make sure you're keeping those in warm places or room temperature places rather than somewhere super cold. And then also use a new battery for every match. So make sure to bring spares with your robot, because if you're using the same battery for a long period of time, the voltage is going to go down, and then your robot's going to perform a little differently every time. So it's important for consistency to use a battery with like a consistent voltage every time. So try to use a charged one for every match, even if it still has enough charge to be used. And then also, you're going to want to keep the driver hub and batteries constantly charging when you're not using them. So we have a battery charging board that's plugged into a socket, so all those batteries are always being charged. And then for our driver hub, we have a power bank, which is always plugged into the driver hub. So those are just extra precautions to make sure that everything is always charged up, because especially like the driver hub, that gets discharged super fast, so make sure that those are always charged. And then also consider making a robot travel case and a driver hub for your driver hub and controller board. So what we have is we have this box that we can roll. It has a couple foam pads from the field on the bottom, so the robot has something soft to sit on. And then it also has a space for our controller board. And that's just really helpful because it's a place to store everything. We know that the robot's not going to be mixed up and like hit around in the car. So that's helpful for moving it around and for qualifiers. And then also on the day of the qualifier, it's important to assign roles so everyone knows what they're doing and everything can run smoothly. So someone should know if they're charging and replacing the batteries after every match, especially when you have matches that are close to one another. So we have a checklist for all of our matches, so we know what we need to do to get our robot in the right place for autonomous, what we need to do for like replacing the batteries. And that's super helpful because a lot of those things might seem simple, but it's super easy to forget them in the moment. So have someone make a plan for the games and check off all the things from the checklist as well. All right, I think that's all we had. So if anyone has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Good. We'll talk a lot more. I think Thursday's session is on team roles at the qualifier, if I'm remembering right. We'll talk a lot more about some of those logistics of what do you have your kids do and how do you make sure all this happens then. But these tips will get you. They should eliminate most of the most common mistakes of, oh, my robot's not working, or, oh, it's different this time. And most of them are not, it doesn't have to be complicated. You bust out the zip ties and make sure everything's, not loose and you're changing the battery all the time and stuff. And you should be well on your way to having the robot be more consistent. I will mention, excuse me here, it was on the last slide, but there is the first Wisconsin Production Hub, which is really groups of teams that are set up to help other teams if they need a part. So if you're in a spot where, hey, I need a battery holder, I don't have one, what do I do? Or I'd like to put my rev hub on a metal plate, but I'm not ready. I don't know how to do that yet. The First Wisconsin Production Hub, you can find it from the First Wisconsin website. You can reach out to teams and say, I need a metal plate that does this. Can you help me out in the next couple of days? We do quite a bit of that with the gearheads too. So you can also just email any of the gearhead team members or email me and say, hey, we'd like help with making a part. And that's 3D printed parts, sheet metal parts, CNC machined parts. We've been spending a lot of time on that lately, helping out teams. So don't get stuck. If you're like, I'd like to do that, but I don't know how, just reach out, and lots of teams can help you get a part made straight away for that. Thank you very much, Ria. You guys have a good night.
All right. Thank you.
Bye now.